NFL Live. Speaking with local media at the Combine this week, Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni called A.J. Brown, quote, a great player, a good teammate, a good person, but could not guarantee Brown will be an Eagle next season. Here's Sirianni and GM Howie Roseman on Brown's status.
He has meant so much to our football team these past 4 years, and like I said, I've always said I've never hidden my relationship with him, and we're at a point that, we want to keep good players around. Always excited to have him on the football team and look forward to continuing that relationship. I know I want to continue that relationship. I know he wants to continue that relationship, and excited about that.
AJ's been a great player for us. Not a good player, a great player for us. He does have tremendous character, and so I think from our perspective, we're looking to add to our roster. We're not looking to subtract. And so, I've been really consistent in saying that.
Since 2019, when Brown entered the league, 4 players have 6 seasons with at least 1,000 receiving yards. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs. And Brown's gone over 1,000 in all 4 seasons with Philly, the only Eagle ever with 4 1,000-yard seasons. Somebody familiar with Brown from time together in Nashville, current Patriots coach Mike Vrabel, who talked about Brown pretty openly today.
It has meant a lot. I've watched him grow. I've watched him mature. I'm proud of him. Proud of the father that he is. I'm proud of the husband, and that has nothing to do with where he plays and where he played. So those are the things that are important. We reach out and text each other during the things that happen good to each other, and sometimes things don't go so well for the people that you're close with, and you text those as well. So it's a two-way street of support and reminders of what got us to where we are here today.
Booger McFarland, you hear that from Mike Vrabel. Could you see Brown getting traded to New England? Boog, you got me? All right, let's go to Graz. Graz, you're on the ins and outs of a lot of these transactions. What do you think about the potential of A.J. Brown in Foxborough?
I think it's unlikely. Look, I mean, we had Saquon Barkley on NFL Live late last week, and he told us in no uncertain terms A.J. Brown is a Patriots fan. He had been on a Patriots podcast with Gronk and Edelman and had some comments about that. But talking to people around here, it doesn't sound like the Eagles feel any kind of compulsion to get A.J. Brown out of their building, or that they feel any real desire to get A.J. Brown out of their building. That said, it's the Eagles. It's Howie Roseman. If somebody calls, he picks up the phone, and they'll assess any potential trade for its overall value. They believe they would have to get an awful lot in return to justify moving on from A.J. Brown, who, as Howie said, excellent player for them, has helped them win a Super Bowl. So I would think at this point it doesn't sound likely that the Eagles will end up trading A.J. Brown. You just can't rule out the possibility that they get the kind of offer that blows them away.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is that Howie Roseman's usually in acquisition mode on the other end. He's usually a buyer. He's not necessarily a seller, especially a guy who still can play and is still considered one of the best wide receivers in the sport. I also go to the New England side of it. Last year, the Patriots had the most cap space in the league, and they spent more than any other team in free agency. I know that wasn't a big story during Super Bowl week. It was this great rise from Drake May. They actually bought a lot of players, and Mike Vrabel was asked about it today. He said, traditionally, if I want to go to Neiman Marcus or Nordstrom's, if I want something, I'll buy it. And I usually can, and that's the job of Elliott Wolf in the front office to make it work. This year, they don't have that same salary cap space. So even bringing in A.J. Brown for New England, it would take a lot of cap gymnastics, and it would certainly take a bounty of picks and other things to get him over from Philly. So I hate to dampen it. I hate to say no. I kind of have that reaction Booger did when we first started the segment, just kind of blank face, and we'll see.
Yeah, that kind of freaked me out as I started talking. I thought Booger was freezing and staring at me. Hey, Graz, what are you going to say? Yeah, look, I think on the Patriots end, they do need to continue to build out their roster around Drake May. And they tried to get a number 1 receiver last offseason. They end up with Stephon Diggs, who played very well for them, but probably doesn't necessarily fit that description at this point in his career. So I think they'll poke around. But to Peter's point, the assets it would take, not only bringing him in and paying him $29 million, but what it would take to get him. If you're the Patriots, do you really want to be thinking about using first and second round picks that way, as opposed to trying to find foundational pieces that are going to be with you for a long time as you build out what's obviously an extremely promising roster that was just in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, and going back to your point, Graz, about the addition of Stefon Diggs, 1,000-yard receiver, that's awesome. He was the only wide receiver on the roster to get over 600 yards, and he does turn 33 in November. Not long in the tooth, but you would like some younger pieces there with a 23-year-old QB. Hey, time for one more thing before we go. Jim Harbaugh's free agent this offseason, and Bucs coach Todd Bowles and GM Jason Light said this about getting Evans back.
I'm hoping and praying he comes back. I mean, he's been a Buck his whole life. You know, he's done so much for the city and the team of Tampa Bay that it's unmistakable. But he's earned the right to look around in free agency because he's played so long, and we just hope and pray that he comes back.
We do have great communication with his agent. We've dealt with him several times. It's been awesome. We want Mike back. Mike's meant a lot to us, and ultimately, we'd like to have him retire.
Graz, 12 seasons for Evans in Tampa. Where do things stand between Evans and the Bucs?
They're in contact with him and his agents. They know that they want to go out and see what the market is, and that's going to be an interesting answer because this is a 32-year-old player who's been historically productive, a unique kind of receiver, relies more on size than speed. Maybe he can play a little longer than some other guys would. So, the Buccaneers have drafted a lot at the position. They have Jalen McMillan, third-round pick from 2 years ago. They have Emeka Egbuka, first-round pick from last year. They re-signed Chris Godwin in free agency last year. Not only is it about Mike Evans figuring out what he can get on the open market, but then it's also about the Bucs figuring out if he fits into their overall picture. So, this could go either way.
Evans held below 1,000 yards for the first time in his career, did play just 8 games, but took until his 12th season to not hit that milestone. How about a 12-time Pro Bowler? Adam Schefter reporting Trent Williams and the Niners struggling to find a contractual solution to their scheduled $39 million cap hit. Niners GM John Lynch said this.
I've met with both Trent and with his agent, Vincent Taylor, and had really good, productive, and substantive meetings. And so Trent loves being a Niner. We love having Trent as a Niner. And it's up to us to figure that out and to thread that needle. There's some unique circumstances in that we all know what Trent is as a player, how great of a player he's been. He's going to be 38 years old, and so there's some things that go into that. But I think we're all on the same page and feel very positive about where that's going.
Peter, that run game was night and day with and without Williams. You hear John Lynch citing age. How do you see this playing out between Williams and the Niners?
Well, there's something very significant when you look at Trent Williams. It's 12 Pro Bowls, yes, but there's also a C on the jersey and what he means to that team. I would be shocked if they couldn't figure out some sort of compromise for Trent Williams. This is a guy who is the heart and soul of the team, and especially on that offensive line, and also sets the tone. Often him with the boombox coming out onto the field, but also he's the guy in the locker room who's the veteran presence. I saw John Lynch this morning. We were over at the hotel having coffee, talked to him briefly. This is one of those where this isn't an Ayuk, this isn't Deebo Samuel from a few years ago. This is Trent Williams, and I think he knows they have to be creative. Solution. They want Trent Williams in a 49ers jersey next year. They'll find a way.
C on the chest, 12 times a Pro Bowler and a second-team All-Pro last season. Let's go up to Minnesota. Question in that QB room after a down first year on field for J.J. McCarthy. Our Vikings reporter Kevin Seifert posted this yesterday, citing Vikings EVP Rob Brzezinski on QB options, quote, "I don't know that we're ruling anything out. We have not a ton of time, but we have a couple of weeks, and we're exploring every option that could be out there. It's casting a wide net, I guess I would say." Graz, there is some smoke there, but I need some help finding embers. Fill us in on the Vikings' plans.
Look, what the Vikings, I think, would really like to do, they're not ready to give up on J.J. McCarthy, but they're also not ready to just sort of hand him the keys again and anoint him the starter after the way last year went. So, who do you get to come in? Ideally, I think they would like to get a veteran who can start if need be, and also, could kind of push J.J. McCarthy to a point where sometime during this season or next year, they feel like he's back to the player that they thought he was when they drafted him. So, who's that? You could think of somebody like a Kyler Murray if Arizona ends up releasing him, a Geno Smith if the Raiders end up releasing him, that you could get those guys for minimum salary deals at that point. That might be very appealing to a Vikings team that has to get under the cap and has other problems to solve.
And a Minnesota team that, I think it's fair to say, cobbled its way to 9 wins last season, and their quarterback threw for even 200 yards in just 2 of them. Coming up, still no decision at QB in Pittsburgh. Back here on NFL Live, in an impossibly deep NFC West, Arizona has 1 playoff appearance and 0 playoff wins since 2015. Kyler Murray was limited to just 5 starts in 2025. Cardinals GM Monty Ossenfort talked about the team's plan under center.
I'd say all options are on the table for us, okay? We got Kyler, Jacoby, Keaton, all under contract. As it pertains to that position, as it pertains to every position on our team, I think those discussions go on daily. I've always had a good dialogue with Kyler, and, I'd say, it wasn't up to what Kyler wanted. It wasn't up to, what any of us wanted as a season as a whole. And so, when you had the kind of year that we had, there's a lot of room for improvement.
After those comments, our Josh Weinfuss reporting this. A source said Kyler Murray and Cardinals GM Monty Ossenfort haven't talked this offseason, refuting what Ossenfort said earlier at this Combine press conference. Murray's off a career-low 47 QBR in just 5 games played last season. Let's get the boys back in. Graz, start with you. Ossenfort also said internal discussions are happening daily in Glendale. When does this team need to make a decision on Kyler's future?
Sometime within the next 16 days, because he's already guaranteed $36.8 million this year. But if he's still on the roster on the 3rd day of the league year, which is March 14th, then $19.5 million of his 2027 salary becomes fully guaranteed. And if you aren't sure about this guy as the quarterback of your future, you certainly don't want to be committing money beyond this year if you don't have to. So the Cardinals, they hope to be able to trade him. They probably would have to pay a chunk of the salary in order to get a deal done. But if they can't, I think the odds are that he gets released by that 3rd day of the league year.
Yeah, it's a good assumption. And Mike LaFleur comes in, coach. He's been saying all the right things, too, saying he's open to all the possibilities and obviously open dialogue on Kyler. Truth of the matter is, here's where, Monty Ossenfort needs to make his money as a general manager. Can you land this plane? Can you get something for Kyler Murray? Because I don't think Michael Bidwill is spending $40 million and eating $40 million to see him play elsewhere after the start of the league new year. Dan's got the numbers right. He's got the timing right. Is can you get a trade? Even if it's a 6th or 5th or 4th round pick, can you find a trade? Because that would mean someone else is going to take at least a portion of this salary. Fascinating decision here for the Cardinals because, like we said, there's not a real number 2 quarterback in this draft. So, yeah, you have the 3rd overall pick, but you're not taking Ty Simpson 3rd overall. You're not taking Drew Aller 3rd overall. And there's not that dazzling free agent quarterback, maybe outside of Malik Willis, that you're going to go and spend the money on. Can you trade Kyler Murray? Can you get someone else to eat some of that cost? Monty Ossenfort, we don't make money necessarily in November and December as a general manager. You make your money here, and this is what the job is. Can you land the plane?
Boog, teams might not be interested at $40 million, but if the Cardinals took some of that burden, whatever the roster gymnastics might be, Graz mentioned Minnesota as a possible fit. Who makes sense to pursue Kyler as a realistic landing spot for that plane?
I mean, realistically, I don't think anybody's going to trade for Kyler Murray. I think he's gotten to a point right now where when you look at him as a 5'10" maybe quarterback who struggled throwing from the pocket, yeah, he's athletic, but he's been hurt. I just think the market for Kyler Murray to go to another team is going to be small. It's clear that the Arizona Cardinals don't want Kyler Murray anymore. And so asking Monty Ossenfort to go into his David Copperfield hat and pull something out, I know he's good. I don't think he can do magic. And so to ask him to go into that hat and pull out a 3rd or 4th or 5th round pick, I don't know if you can give Kyler Murray away right now. I just think Kyler Murray's in a situation based on everything that's happening in Arizona, based on the injury, based on the homework clause, all the things that you put together. I think it's going to be tough for him to find a spot to play as a starting quarterback in 2026.
Let's get to some more QB questions around the league, maybe not as complicated as making the Statue of Liberty disappear. Graz, what are you hearing about Tua's future in Miami?
Well, the Arizona Cardinals look at this and say, wow, I'm glad I'm not in their situation financially. Tua Tagovailoa is guaranteed $54 million this year, whether he's on the Dolphins or not. So everything we just said about Arizona and the difficulty that they'll have trying to trade Kyler Murray applies probably a little bit more even to Tua Tagovailoa. The Dolphins would probably have to pay down a good chunk of that money. How much of that they're willing to pay and how much a team is willing to give them in return remains to be seen. Tua Tagovailoa, a cut candidate if they can't find a trade partner.
And it's amazing. We continue to ask teams to help us with our mistakes. Arizona and Miami clearly made a mistake with Kyler Murray and Tua giving them these long-term deals. But we're asking, hey, will you come help me? I'll pay you to take this mistake away from me. I don't think it's going to happen. I think ultimately they're going to have to eat this money, very similar to how the Denver Broncos ate it with Russell Wilson. Denver was fine. Arizona will be fine, and Miami will be fine at some point. But if I'm another team, I'm not helping you fix your mistake. You shouldn't have paid Tua. You shouldn't have paid Kyler Murray. Now you got to deal with it.
And that quote on screen from new GM John Eric Sullivan saying at the Combine, quote, everything else is on the table, including the potential of a trade. It feels like it's likely heading toward an off-ramp. In New Jersey, they call those jug handles. Graz, let's go to Florham Park. What are you hearing about the Jets' QB plans?
So the Jets, obviously, at 2, as we've discussed, not in a position to take a quarterback there. I'm sure they'll work out some of the later round prospects and see if there's anything there, but probably hit free agency, and that could mean anything. It could mean a Kyler Murray type if he gets cut loose. It could mean a Daniel Jones if he somehow gets out of Indianapolis, a Malik Willis if they're able to outbid other teams in free agency. The Jets are sort of planning multiple paths depending on what kind of quarterback they end up with because they know it's an interesting market and they're not entirely sure how it's going to shake out.
I know a lot of Jet fans are watching and they're throwing their up saying, really? We have the number 2 overall pick and there's not a quarterback for us? It's true. There's not. There's no quarterback in this draft that's going to be worth taking at number 2 overall. But however, at 16 overall, maybe you could convince yourself that one of these prospects is worthy of that, especially if you have 2 first-round picks. Truth of the matter is this: Justin Fields under center for under contract for at least another year. They have no reason to get rid of him. He's under contract at an affordable number. They can keep him. And then you start looking at some of these names that might be free agents. You mentioned Tua, obviously, and Kyler. Those might be at different price points. Kenny Pickett, I know, Jets fans, I get it. Kenny Pickett, Geno Smith might be a free agent. He might be available for like a homecoming of some sort. Jimmy Garoppolo, I know. These are not necessarily quarterbacks you're going to be doing flips over. But when you have all these draft picks, you have such a young roster, these are the realistic names that might be taking snaps under center for the Jets this season.
Hey, we just saw Sam Darnold resurrect his career in Seattle. A similar uptick from one of those guys you mentioned. And let's go from Aaron Rodgers' former team to his most recent one, maybe his one for 2026. 42-year-old Rodgers, an unrestricted free agent after 1 season in Pittsburgh. So, Graz, what are the Steelers' plans?
Steelers, I don't think, have ruled out the possibility of running it back with Aaron Rodgers if he wants to play another season, which is a question they still don't know the answer to. Their GM, Omar Khan, saying he doesn't expect that decision to take as long as it did last year. And once it's made by Rodgers, the Steelers will assess whether they want to move forward with him for another year or if there are other options. And then we go right back to the same list of potential free agent fits, potential trade targets. So it sounds like Aaron Rodgers going back there is a strong possibility. If not, then they're in the same boat as these other teams.
Or maybe they just played a quarterback that they drafted last year in Will Howard. Why do we continue to try to get Grandpa off the rocking chair and put him back in the lineup? At some point, guys, we have to come to the conclusion that a 42-year-old quarterback just doesn't want to get hit anymore. And yeah, he can play in a 2 or 3 game stretch. But from a 17-game standpoint, Aaron Rodgers ain't giving you nothing anymore. So I think it's time for the Steelers to move on. At some point, we have to accept the fact that the 4-time MVP we're used to seeing isn't anymore. Move on. Let the young guy play. I'm tired of seeing Aaron Rodgers limp out there and us get all these great expectations. Is he going to conjure back up the MVP status? Hell no, he's not. He old. He don't want to get hit no more.
Yeah, and you look at those tush pushes. Rodgers is, as far away from it as those of us on the sidelines, just celebrating the first down, and Pat Freiermuth or somebody else is taking the snap. Graz, there was a 1-year deal for a quarterback last year in Indianapolis that was looking like a dream until Daniel Jones tore his Achilles. What is the QB status for the Colts?
The Colts believe they'll have Daniel Jones back, whether it's on a long-term deal or whether they use a transition tag or a franchise tag to hold him in place while they do a long-term deal. They had a lot of success with him, as you mentioned, before he got injured, and they would like to run it back with him if possible. So I would anticipate the Colts, if they don't get a deal done by the franchise tag deadline, which is next Tuesday, that they would use one of the tags to hold him in place and continue to work on a long-term deal.
And Anthony Richardson's still there, and he's under contract, and he was a 4th overall pick, and who knows? We'll see, right? Like, this is what they're looking at. Now, how is Daniel Jones rehabbing? That's all under, we'll see where he gets as the timeline goes. But, of course, they were 8-2 with him. He was an MVP conversation. That was a serious injury. Anthony Richardson, he was asked, Ballard was asked about it yesterday, and he said he's still on the roster. So let's see where he's at, too, when he comes back the next time he's in the building, trying to throw a football and see if he's ready to compete another time around.
And I don't even want to ask Booger's thoughts about Phillip Rivers after his comments with Aaron Rodgers and letting Grandpa back on the field.
Listen,
ageist.
Phillip Rivers has a son that's about to go to NC State. Let's just go find the oldest dudes we can find and put them back on the field. Maybe they can play. Let's go.
I've seen John Elway at games looking like he can still sling it. Let's keep it going.
There you go.
Hey, still to come. Turn back to NFL Live, where we ask the sincere questions. After back-to-back seasons with 17.5 sacks, Trey Hendrickson's long-term future was the topic of last offseason in Cincy. After an off year, Hendrickson limited to just 4 sacks in 7 games played. Bengals Director of Player Personnel Duke Tobin was asked about using the franchise tag on the edge rusher.
I'm not going to talk about how we're going to deploy our resources and what our intention is with the tag, or I'm not going to close any doors on any player that we've had or any of our free agents up here today. I'm just not going to do that. Trey's been a great player for us. He didn't have the year he wanted this year. We didn't have the year we wanted this year. Those are factors, and we'll see where we go from there. But in terms of how we're going to deploy the tag, if we are going to, that's not something I'm going to talk about here.
So, Dan Graziano, Duke Tobin there, keeping cards close to the vest or the quarter zip. What are you hearing about Cincinnati's plans with Trey Hendrickson?
Yeah, that they haven't ruled anything out, including using the franchise tag or a transition tag to keep him there or to set up for a potential trade. Tough needle to thread, given that he was unhappy last year, but that they didn't want to commit to him beyond 1 year. You could be creating the same kind of problem. And if you're setting up for a trade, it's kind of hard to imagine a team wanting to trade something for a 31, 32-year-old edge rusher on a franchise or transition tag number, given the depth we're seeing in the free agent market in the draft this year at the edge position. So I think in the end, it's likely that they part ways, and Cincinnati knows it has to pretty much rebuild its entire defensive line and help on the back end as well after the year they just had on defense.
It's a curious situation because we went through all this over the summer. I mean, he's talking about how he met his wife, a nurse, in Cincinnati, and how he's built his family in Cincinnati, and he's emotionally connected. But there was so much drama this past summer when he's talking to local media on his own that you almost say, okay, this is a natural parting of ways. This could be a right place to go off the exit ramp, and maybe he goes and explores his third team. Remember, he was their first big free agent signing in many years when they signed him from the New Orleans Saints. But it's been a nice ride. I would be very surprised if he was either tagged or if they came to terms with a new monster deal with Trey Hendrickson. It's been a nice ride. I feel like this is a good time in the timeline after what we went through last offseason. Maybe it's time for Trey to finish his career somewhere else.
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. I think this is the best for both parties. It's clear that Trey Hendrickson wants to move on. They did like a little patchwork job last year to make everybody kumbaya to play this season, but that didn't work. Trey didn't have the type of protection and guarantees that he wants, but he went out and played anyway and didn't have a good season. So I think it's best for both parties if Trey moves on. I think he's probably looking to get like a 2 or 3 year deal with a couple years of guaranteed money. And I think if you're Cincinnati, it's time to play some of those young guys that you've drafted. Put those guys on the field, allow them to get out there, because at some point when you draft these young guys, you got to put them on the field. So I think it's best for both parties to move on. Trey Hendrickson to go his separate ways, and for Cincinnati to start playing some of those young guys.
Gosh, 2021-22 season, Cincinnati goes to back-to-back AFC title games, went to the Super Bowl, the first of those. 3 straight playoff misses since. New on NFL Live, Mel Kiper had Ruben Bain, edge rusher, going to Cincy in his latest mock draft, and Bain spoke this morning about rising to the occasion in big games.
I can make a play every play, each play. My effort going to determine how the outcomes of the games is, and I came in with the mindset of just a kill-all mentality because it's a playoffs, it's a win or go home. And if you check my track record in the playoffs, that's my best football of my life.
Bain also said no teams have brought up his potentially less than ideal arm length this week. We'll keep an eye on those measurements tomorrow. Bain, one of 11 front 7 players Mel Kiper has going in round 1 of this week's latest mock. We've already touched on David Bailey, Arvell Reese. Booger, take us through some of the D linemen you like in this class.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the aforementioned Ruben Bain. To me, I don't care what the arm length says. I don't care what the tape. When you turn it on, he is absolutely outstanding. He dominates the guy in front of him. If you don't think he can play a defensive end, you reduce him down to defensive tackle. He's been outstanding. At some point, you stop worrying about the measurables and you just worry about the football player. Don't get caught up in the arm length and how tall he is. I just know that when you turn the tape on, he's probably been the most dominant player in this draft. And the guy on the other side, Akeem Mesidor, we're going to talk about how old he is. 25 years old, played a lot of football. But as far as a pure defensive end, pure pass rusher, a guy that can play inside and outside, a guy that can get to the quarterback, in a day and age where we're looking to get pass rush, he is a ready-made pass rusher. His repertoire is already set. I think if you get Bain, if you get Mesidor, you're getting a guy that can get to the quarterback. On the other side, I look at Zion Young out of Missouri. When you talk about a guy who can line up and play the run and rush the passer adequately and do them both at a high level, you're talking about Zion Young. I think throughout this draft process, his stock is going to continue to go up, up, up and away, as Dickie B would say, because people are going to realize he's not just a pass rusher. He's a complete defensive end that can set the edge and penetrate and make plays in the backfield, as you can see with his 18 tackles for losses last season. One thing about this draft, you'll hear a lot of people say, well, this draft is not a good draft. Everybody's looking forward to 2027. Here's what I'll tell you. If you need a defensive lineman, if you need an edge rusher, if you need somebody to impact your team on the front 7, this is the draft for you, because it's going to go 25 or 30 deep, I think, in the first 4 rounds as far as guys that can play and put their hand in the dirt and get after the quarterback.
Oh, he's up. Welcome into NFL Live. News is flowing from the NFL Combine, including the latest on the QB carousel. What does the future hold? Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, and Tua Tagovailoa? We will fill you in. And there's been a big change in Denver. Sean Payton has given up play calling duties. One of us says that is a big gamble. More on that decision in the Mile High City. Plus, in Philly, always seems to be change. After Nick Sirianni said there's no guarantees that A.J. Brown will be back next season, what's next out wide for the Eagles? And officially, a happy Combine Eve to all who observe. We have 13 personnel package here on NFL Live. Booger McFarland, Dan Graziano, Peter Schrager. I am Phil Murphy, and we'll hear from a lot of voices on the ground in Indy. It is the epicenter of the NFL universe all week. Combine workouts kick off tomorrow with the front 7. And edge rushers are at a premium in today's NFL. That's how Ohio State's Arvell Reese says he wants to be evaluated as opposed to being an off-ball linebacker. He and fellow pass rusher David Bailey spoke to our Kimberly Martin about how they can stand out in Indy.
Just to showcase my ability. You know, I think I'm a pretty athletic guy, and it's just good to showcase that here and run fast here. I think I just got to be myself. I think I'm athletic, and I really just see me. So I'm not focused on separating myself from nobody, but just focused on being the best me, and right now I feel good.
I feel like I'm not really scratching the surface of what I can become. I feel like I took a big step from junior year to senior year in terms of my production, but also just in terms of like my maturity and being a student of the game. So I feel like I can keep growing on that. You know, prior to that, I was taking football seriously, but you know, you're a kid. You know, coming freshman year, you're just kind of messing around. You know, having a lot of fun. So you know, now I'm a pro. Like now I'm serious about the game. So you know, I feel like I get underneath a good staff, a good scheme, and I could be a dominant person.
Boog, we're talking D linemen, and you made a living with your hand in the dirt. When you look at Reese and Bailey, how do their skill sets compare?
Well, both of their skill sets are outstanding. I think, if you're a GM, what you're going to try to figure out with Arvell Reese is where does he project? Because we know he's a tremendous athlete, outstanding. He's probably going to come in 6'4", 240, 245 pounds. He may be the most explosive guy up front, but he's kind of been an off-the-ball linebacker. He's never really put his hand in the dirt and been a full-time edge defender. So you have to project what he's going to be using all those traits that he has. When you look at David Bailey, you don't have to project because you saw it. I mean, you saw what he was at Stanford. You saw what he is at Texas Tech. Outstanding. His repertoire of pass rush moves is there. You've seen it. You can turn the tape on. You don't have to project. So if you're a GM, are you going with what you know or what you think you know based on what you see in the traits in Reese? And I think that's going to be the question when we get to this draft coming in Pittsburgh. Do you want the traits or do you want the guy that you've seen do it time after time again on tape?
Yeah, and to your point, Bailey in 3 years in Palo Alto, 14.5 sacks, a total he matched in 14 games in Lubbock, which is why he could be the first edge rusher, if not the first defensive player off the board. The esteemed Mel Kiper Jr. weighing in on that with his latest mock released yesterday. Zero surprise at the top. Fernando Mendoza can start house hunting in Vegas. Maybe a shock at 2, though. A safety, Caleb Downs, joining Aaron Glenn and the Jets. Downs, one of 2 Buckeyes in Mel's top 5, the other being the aforementioned Reese, number 4 overall to Tennessee, and new defensive-minded head coach Robert Saleh. So, Schrags, the Jets and Cardinals probably should not expect Fernando Mendoza to be available to them. But with their needs, knowing it's best available otherwise, what should their thought processes be?
Phil, this is actually very fourth wall meta. I am sitting here in the building at Lucas Oil, and all the defensive linemen are walking by me as we speak behind the camera. And I'm going to tell you this in a whisper because I don't want to offend anybody. This isn't the best draft to have the number 2 overall pick because there's no slam dunk number 2 overall pick. I got to be quiet. If Arvell Reese sees me, I don't want him to come after me. But truthfully, this is one of those weird years where usually there's like a quarterback prospect, and then you got a Myles Garrett, or then you got an Aiden Hutchinson. This might not be that. So you could see a Caleb Downs be elevated to number 2. You could see a Carnell Tate go up all the way to number 2. This is one of those drafts where it's to each his own. There's 31 flavors. You might like David Bailey more than you like Reese, so then take Bailey. There is no slam dunk at any of these as like a Hall of Fame prospect. Myles Garrett isn't in this draft. Joe Thomas isn't in this draft. And there certainly isn't that wide receiver or cornerback in this draft. So it makes it a really tricky spot for the Jets and the Cardinals, who obviously would love to be entertaining the Fernando Mendoza conversation. They sit at number 2, number 3, and it's like, okay, so I guess we like this guy. This is why the workouts matter and why the drills matter and why the interviews matter, because maybe one of these prospects can razzle-dazzle and perform and really make their case for why they belong to be the number 2 and number 3 picks off the board.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because we've gotten so used to seeing multiple quarterbacks go at the top of the draft, and this is apparently not a year where that's going to happen. So that not only means that the Jets and Cardinals sitting at 2 and 3 have to think about what the other positions are that they need, but it also means that a trade down to amass more picks is less likely, because usually if teams are coming up to that point in the draft, it's for a quarterback, and it doesn't seem like that's going to happen this year. So I think you look at the Jets and you look at Arizona at 3, the team needs are what they are. The Jets need playmakers on defense. They did not have a single interception, as everyone has heard 100 times since the end of the season. They need playmakers on defense. You could go offensive line there, but the Jets have done well drafting offensive tackles in recent years, so it's not that big of a need. Arizona, whoever's left, your favorite among the offensive tackles or the big defensive playmakers up front. So, yeah, very interesting year in the draft because we've seen multiple quarterbacks go at or near the top of the draft just about every year for a while now, and this year is not going to be like that.
Yeah, and with Aaron Glenn as a head coach for the Jets, it's just staggering. Himself a former first-round pick defensive back. The team could go 17 games without an interception. Defensive back, not a concern in Denver, but a measure of surprise for the Broncos this week. Some news coming out of the Combine after Denver won the AFC West, went all the way to the AFC title game. First, Sean Payton fires longtime colleague Joe Lombardi as OC, then hands play-calling reins to his new OC, Davis Webb, a decision Payton explained yesterday.
He's extremely talented. With regards to play calling, it's something that, I think he'll be really good at it. And I know that's like, man, are you going to give up play calling? And I would only do that if I felt like it would help our team. I'll still be involved with what we do offensively, just like what we do defensively. But I do think he has a gift. I think he's real sharp. I'm glad he's on our staff.
Shreg, that's a little surprising. Peyton is considered an excellent play caller. I don't know if he's walking past the camera now. Maybe you can say this one with your chest. What do you make of this change in Denver?
Shocking. And I know Sean very well, and I know these other two guys as well know him, and this is what he loves to do. He loves to draw up a play, loves to execute a play, loves to call a play, loves to call a trick play, if we're being honest. To see him actually give up play calling duties, and if he says it, I believe it. And a lot of people are like, he isn't going to actually. If he says it, I believe it. And a lot of this is he was losing Davis Webb if he didn't, right? Like, Davis Webb was the hottest name for all these young offensive coaches as far as, okay, we went through the head coaching cycle. Who's going to be your OC? You see Declan Doyle at 29 years old get hired by the Baltimore Ravens. There was opportunities for Davis Webb across the league to be a play-calling offensive coordinator. So he gets that title, and he gets that responsibility from Sean Payton. I will say this. Pete Carmichael 1 year under Sean Payton did call plays, so it's not unprecedented. Yeah. But when the rubber hits the road and we're talking about an NFC championship game or an AFC championship game, we're talking about a big spot on a fourth down, I'm curious to see who's actually making the final call there.
There's no question, because, Peter, you know this. If you've stood on the sideline during a Sean Payton coached game, the receivers and the tight ends and the running backs that come off the field, they don't go more than 2 feet from him because they know he could just put him right back in the next play. It's like you're watching a mastermind at work, and to the idea that he would give that up is shocking to a lot of people. It says something about Davis Webb, as Sean explained, and also, you know, it may be the kind of thing you have to do in order to keep Davis Webb as your offensive coordinator in a year in which he did generate a lot of interest as an OC candidate and in some cases as a head coach candidate. So I think what you have here is a situation where, especially if it goes well, Davis Webb becomes an even hotter head coach candidate a year from now. And in that case, it might be a situation where this only is in place for 1 year.
I think there are a couple of things at play here. Shreds, I'm going to see if you can follow me here. Let's take a look at the relationship between Sean Payton and Bo Nix. I saw them a couple of times on the sideline. There were some heated conversations. I wouldn't be surprised if the relationship between Davis Webb and Bo Nix may be just a little bit better from a standpoint of age. The communication gap is a little bit different between Davis Webb and Bo Nix. That's number one. Number two, Graziano, you mentioned the fact that Davis Webb had opportunities to go elsewhere. So when you add this up, like, my job is always to try to figure out the how and the why. Like, why is Sean Payton giving up? Sean Payton just is not going to voluntarily give up play calling. But if you put 2 and 2 together, the relationship between Davis Webb and Bo Nix, and the fact that Davis Webb could have left, hey, how can I keep this guy and keep this simpatico going? Oh, let me give up play calling, let me appease Bo Nix, let me appease Davis Webb, and I'll step back and see if I can keep my hands off of it. I don't know, Shreds, if I'm reading too much into it, but it seems like that could be a possibility of morphing those two things together.
Look, and then there was the whole revealing of the ankle injury and all that. So all you're connecting in the dots is kind of the work that Graz and I like to do and try to put together things. But the truth of the matter is, I think this was survival mode. We love Davis Webb. We don't want him going to a division rival, that's for sure. And if we have to give him some more responsibilities and a new title, maybe we have to give that up for the better of the team.
And, Boog, you were talking how and why the Broncos tied a franchise record with 14 wins last season. How, a good number of those fourth-quarter comebacks. The why, Sean Payton admitted in Indianapolis, they weren't good enough through 45 minutes of many of those games. Yeah. We've got a lot more than 45 minutes left on NFL Live, including the mystery of Kyler Murray's future. That's going to be answered.